Links to join the channel here or on Subscribestar or Cash App or Coffee. So here's the thing: I still have this default setting of going to look to the external Messiah complex of a savior coming to fix us in the term in the view of like the government is suddenly going to get its act together, whether in Canada or America, and they're suddenly gonna change and turn things around, and it's like they're gonna try to fix this. It's like, well, I mean, crazy is repeating the same behavior and thinking you're gonna get different results. So no, the system that got us here is not gonna fix the corrupt system that got us here. If you want to change this, it has to be grassroots. That's the only thing that's gonna turn this around. And hopefully, for some of these kind of things, hopefully the left and the right can look at this and say, yeah, this is not the path forward we want the West to take. So what's going on is it turns out this is with dealing with Canada and the MAID system over there. It's a self deletion system. If the Simmons commercial came out, it's a I don't know what it is, a furniture store, but they're advertising that if you're disabled in Canada, you should be put to sleep. And the funny story about that girl who is the woman who was in the that commercial is she admitted that she actually did not want to go, but she Canada wouldn't give her medical treatment to take care of her illness, so she viewed it as her only option. That was a Simmons commercial. I downloaded it and put it on Odyssey and BitChute. I mean, this is like puts on nightmare glasses, and nothing changes. Like when I say the governments of Canada or America, they're not going to fix this. Big tech and the banks that actually run both countries are not suddenly going to turn around and become altruistic. None of that's going to happen. The government, the big tech, any of that. It's like that's the solution's not going to come from them. So it turns out that there are 10,000 cases of assisted deletion in Canada last year. If you offer it as an option, it will become mandatory. By this, I mean the state will always view it as a way out, a cost cutting method. It's only possible in a former country that is now an economic zone. A nation is its people. Canada and America are not nations any longer, they're merely economic zones. And in Europe, if you wanted to save Europe, you could save Europe now, but it would probably take a civil war to do it. MAID stands for, oh gosh, medically induced self deletion, something like that. So when you're disabled and you require taxpayer money to take care of you, the government will just get rid of you because they have other places they want to spend your taxpayer dollars. Offering MAID allows the government to not to have to fix the conditions that cause this situation because deleting you is an option. And here's the thing, if you're in Canada, you're in this situation, don't take this, bleed the system dry. If you're like whatever you have to do, do not give up. Let them become as public as possible about this, even if you literally have to just like refuse to leave, or they have to you refuse to leave the hospital, refuse to leave the house. It's like make other people aware of this. Like the fact that 10,000 people self delete in Canada to last year, and some of them were listing poverty as an option, is you got to fight back against this. So if the government always has that option of simply deleting people who become a problem, well, that's the end of the country. When people are admitting that poverty is why they're doing this, why don't you use the taxpayer money to care for the people who need it? Because America and Canada are over. They are gone to the point that it would be better to combine parts of them to form a new nation, one not run by bankers and big tech. You saw what happened to J6 and the Canadian truckers. If you're on the moderate left and you saw that, and what's continued to go on with those people, all the while Trudeau is cheering on the Chinese protesters while he went after, and allegedly he got elected twice. So that's, a lot of this stuff is like we're not going to be able to save everyone. If we can save a few million people to get a critical mass to say, you know what, we want to take our own area, um, then that's all we need. But it's like one part of it is spreading the message to get to that critical mass, and also for people to recognize that this is absolutely necessary. This is much more serious than the media is letting on. And then when you realize that, you look at the media and you go, oh, the media is in on it with the government, big tech, and the bankers. And yes, I know that sounds a little, I don't know, paranoid delusions. But when there's objective evidence to back it up, eventually, like you stop letting them gaslight you. It's, oh, it's just tinfoil hat theories. It's like, but here's the objective evidence. We've laid out the issue, the rule analysis, and we've reached a reasonable conclusion. We can clearly articulate a reasonable suspicion of the things that are occurring. This isn't tinfoil hat stuff. 10,000 Canadians took part in this deletion thing last year. That should have, if we've gotten to an area of, I don't know, Sodom or Weimar where that's acceptable, it's time to turn this thing around. So if you're on the moderate left and you saw that, that wasn't right. You know that if you step off the plantation, they're going to come for you. The moderate left has to look at those events and accept the government and media a narrative so that they can justify the government destroying all the Canadian truckers and the J6 guys. But in the back of your mind, you got to be feeling a sick feeling. I guess I'd be in the pit of your stomach, but hey, it's late. If you go against the media and the government narrative, if you upset the banks and the financial institutions, then you know what will happen. They'll destroy your life. If they remove you from taking part in modern day digital life, well, you're in a position of, what are you going to do? You're going to be homeless. And if you're in Canada, you're probably going to take them up on the offer of self-deleting. And the thing is, if you really don't see what's going on, I mean, it's like, why do I do these videos? Why do thousands of other people do videos? Like, because we're trying to form this network to get people to cause this mass awakening. But if you're on the left and you really don't see it, or you think that the West is going down the right path, then I don't think you can be saved. And like I said, it's like we don't have to save everyone. We just have to save a few million people who are saying, yes, we're going to survive by any means necessary. And like I said, I think it's better to split the country at this point. If people want to form a Christian state, if that's where the energy is, I know not all of our guys are Christian. Usually the further you go right, they kind of get into other things. But we're also pragmatic, I think. I think we're pragmatic. Is like we will go with what works. And if it wants to be, if the energy, I kind of suspect there's a fair amount of Christians out there, or at least people who are recognize that the Christian structure is the way to move forward, especially if it's a more based Christianity of, a time gone past. Christianity of the swords and the glowing eyes of Christ, so to speak. So I think there would be a lot of support for that. And I know what it sounds like. You're talking about reforming a country. Countries only last a few hundred years anyway. It's like, it's not hyperbolic to say, well, America and Canada, they had a run, and it looks like that run is over. And it's like, if you want to take the south part of Canada and the north part of America, or maybe it doesn't have to be contiguous, contained area, one area. It's like it could be separate, discrete areas. I don't know. We can have the discussion. We're probably not going to have the discussion on YouTube when you're advocating the peaceful dissolution. All Constitution protected activity, of course. I mean, I'm sure there are provisions in the Constitution to do all this kind of stuff. So, I think there's like what do you call it in the American Constitution? It's like a assembly of the states or something. Anyway, so no, you can't just kill Canadians because they're poor. You should be using taxpayer money to treat them and house them until they pass naturally. That's the point of a nation, to take care of the people. Or you look at America, Oregon, Washington, California, they're homeless tent cities throughout all those states. Any state throughout all of America now. It's like, clearly that's a nation that's gone off track. This stuff you're seeing now can only, let me go to the other shot. The stuff you're seeing now can only be described as satanic. The government never has to fix the conditions that cause the poverty if they always have the option to simply delete people who are parasitical losses, drains on the system. No, people should not have to raise crowd funds to survive. That's what people pay taxes for. That's why the founding fathers of both these countries established a nation. Were those nations perfect, as the naysayers point out? No, of course not. But they were moving in the right direction. And then about post-war years, after World War II, things rapidly shifted in the wrong direction. And that's why I say, like, none of those wars should have been fought, including going back to World War One. And even if you want to go back to the Civil War, I look at that and thought, if there could have been anything, another way to solve that. No, slavery is not good, but if there was another way to solve that, I look at that and think, yeah. So you're going back like the 1860s. That's 150 odd years. But the thing is, looking at the situation now, yeah, it's worth a civil war now to fix this because the slippery slope just keeps on sliding. And don't get me wrong, if you got terminal pancreatic cancer, something horrific, you do what you want, obviously. And like maybe there should be something like this, but it's like you got to recognize the horrors of the slippery slope. And no, poverty, like you should be taking care of people. And like terminal cancer is one thing, but like you have patients here who are simply mentally ill, they're depressed, or they need ongoing care. It's like, well, that's the point of a nation, to provide care for the sick, the elderly, all these kind of things. It's like Canada is deleting them because they're costing taxpayer money. It's like, well, that's the point of taxpayer money. Perhaps you don't need to go fight foreign wars for other countries when you have homeless tent cities in both Canada and America and people who need care. Um, and it's like in America, they have this, the left has this philosophy of like, they combine all these things: health at every size, open borders, and then taxpayer funded everything, taxpayer funded schools and healthcare and everything. I go, listen, if you close the borders, you could have taxpayer funded a lot, and you stop fighting foreign wars. Yeah, you can have taxpayer funded healthcare and schools, but you can't have open borders and you can't push health at every size because you simply, like, what happens is you run out of money, or the government will just simply keep printing money. But you get the point. It's like they're asking for a system that's impossible. You can't have, and the thing is, it's not an open border because it's not a two-way street. It's a one-way street. It's like you're always going to have a net drain on the system unless you take care of that. And that's an argument the left wing doesn't want to have because they just call you istophobic. Anyway, so you can't have people who are encouraged to delete themselves because they're costing the government too much money. What's the point of the country if they don't take care of the disabled and the elderly? Why would you bother paying taxes at all if they're just going to put you to sleep if you need medical care? That's my point. The countries are already at the point of tyranny. The fact that we are here where we are means things went off track. At least over 50 years ago, over 50 years, more than that. Post World War II, things seriously got off track. I mean, they're past the point of fixing within the system. And you know how we got here: 70 years of feminism, liberalism, socialism, open borders. These people were encouraged not to have families, so there is nobody to care for them when they need help. These are failed countries already. They're encouraged, like when if you pay for something, you'll get more of it. In America, I'm more familiar with, in Canada, essentially was paying for the government to be fathers for a lot of people. And it's like, well, you got more of that. So in Canada, these people were encouraged not to have families either, that the taxpayer would essentially be their family. But then now the taxpayer in the form of the government is pulling the rug from underneath their feet where they need care and they're not taking care of it. And there are other issues causing this, but this is for the sake of the YouTube version, so I'm going to skip that kind of stuff because I don't want to get Epstein on YouTube. And the thing is, if you're on the left and you see poor people encouraged to delete themselves, how do you feel about this? The government will never fix inflation or poverty if they always have the money-saving option of just deleting the poor, elderly, or disabled. What's the point of paying into and accepting this system of open borders that drives housing costs up or devalues the dollars? Where like you have this system that created everything to get to this end stage of the just simply deleting people when they need help, but it's a manipulated system that got everyone to this point, and it took about 70 years to get here. They created a system in Canada that doesn't take care of Canadians when they need help. In the future, this is simply going to be mandatory. You have somebody with a health condition at 30, like this guy, who needs treatment. And the thing is, like, this is the cost of a nation. Yes, there are going to be people who need lifelong care. That's acceptable. That's the cost of a nation. The fact that they call us Hugo Boss, yeah, because we're free speech and we value taking care of people. And it's like, as it turns out, no, it's the left wing communists who want to put people down. Because, like, what do you think is happening in Canada and America right now? So in the future, this is just going to be mandatory. You're going to look at somebody who's got a health condition at 30. The government looks at the cost to the state over his lifespan, and they're not going to bother with any treatment. It's just not even going to be on the table. They're just going to put you in the Soylent Green room right off the bat. They're not even going to give you the option. You think I'm kidding? My brother in Christ, they killed 10,000 Canadians last year. This isn't a conspiracy theory. It's all happening. The state is not going to fix the corrupt state. The corrupt media is not going to report on the corrupt media in America. It's the FBI is not going to fix. The FBI is going to arrest the FBI. None of those things are going to happen. None of this is happening from the top down. It has to be us, we the people, either in Canada or America. There's no solution within the system that got us here. Now, the white pill is this. It's the simple cell phone. Social media, alt social media, and Twitter. Elon Musk buying Twitter is huge. I think Elon Twitter is the biggest point on the timeline, bigger than Trump, much bigger than Trump. And Elon Musk can kind of be the guy that Trump could have been, but Trump is not that guy, and it sucks. But and I'm not saying Elon's the external savior either. I'm just saying, by him providing a platform, people are able to talk about what's going on in Canada, America, and Europe. But I'm going to keep it real here. It also requires IRL assembly. It requires finding your family, your greater family, your blood tribe, finding your power levels, admitting how bad things are, and accepting that fixing this requires taking the risk of upsetting the puppet masters. And yeah, they're going to do their best to destroy our lives, but people have to see that that with J6 or Canadian truckers or some dissident voices on the right who speak up, and what happens is they get kicked off social media, they get debanked. Financial institutions, they get put on no-fly lists, they can't rent cars, houses, they're not allowed credit cards. They get destroyed in modern day life because they spoke truth to power, because they use free speech. It's like, well, if you have free speech, but you get your life destroyed by the government, the media, the social media, the financial institutions, and private companies, then you don't have free speech. So obviously, we need to push for free speech, and we need to push to be protected from discrimination based on political opinions. No, you shouldn't be able to be fired. The banks shouldn't be able to cancel your accounts. Massive companies should not be able to discriminate against you. And I look at our representatives, and it's like, they're not doing anything. You got people on the right who have spoke out against all this stuff, and they got put on no-fly lists. Guys, what would the founding fathers think about all this? The government is not the government. I mean, we're in, like, by now, you got to know, if you're listening to this, you know we're in, like, things are very, very far accelerated. And it appears to be the left wing that's doing the accelerating. Anyway, join the Subscribe Star if you want to support this kind of content, so I can get some update the tech gear. And I will see you guys next episode.